celebrada en Georgetown, Guyana, los 33 Estados miembros aprobaron unánimemente regionales interconectados que reflejan las 4 mejoras de la FAO, que contribuyen a la transformación de los sistemas agroalimentarios y que guiarán a la organización en América Latina y el Caribe hasta 2026. Los alimentos provienen del suelo y del agua. Sin embargo, la región es particularmente vulnerable al cambio climático y a las malas prácticas a nivel productivo que han generado degradación ambiental. Entre 2008 y 2018, las pérdidas en la producción agrícola relacionadas con desastres climáticos en América Latina y el Caribe se estimaron en $29.000 millones. En 2022, los desastres relacionados con el clima afectaron a 17 países. Si no actuamos hoy en la adaptación y mitigación al cambio climático, para el 2030, más de 3 millones de personas podrían alcanzar la pobreza extrema, en un escenario donde la escasez de agua se agravará. Por eso, en la región, la FAO trabaja por un mejor medio ambiente, priorizando la gestión sostenible de los recursos de la tierra, los suelos, el agua y la adaptación al cambio climático. En esa labor, también es clave el resguardo de la biodiversidad para lograr un equilibrio ecológico en los ecosistemas, garantizar la diversidad de alimentos y resguardar la cultura de las poblaciones con entornos ambientalmente sanos. A nivel urbano, las ciudades verdes y los centros de distribución de alimentos con reducción de huella ambiental, incluyendo el uso eficiente de energía y agua, también son clave. A través de esta prioridad regional, se busca proteger, restaurar y promover el uso sostenible de los ecosistemas terrestres, acuáticos y marinos y luchar contra el cambio climático. Trabajemos juntos hacia sistemas alimentarios resilientes para un futuro más sostenible.
Me sacó de agua, como decimos los agricultores, porque nos dieron una semilla que sí, les digo, si no hubiera sido la semilla que me dio el ingeniero, el agrónomo Soto, para mí 60, pues hubiéramos perdido, porque yo sembré más de manzana, un cuarto, y solo pude sacar 16 poquitos, y fue una barbaridad que le invertí. Al final, con la semilla que él me dio, fue admirable y toda la gente se admiró. Y he tenido la bondad de regalar, porque debemos de compartir lo poco que se tiene, pues compartirlo con los demás, porque no esperar, porque este año que pasó fue una experiencia para los agricultores. Ya era tiempo de sembrar y no teníamos la semilla. Ahora con una nueva semilla quizás nos va a beneficiar mejor, porque sembramos a la hora que nosotros queremos. Así es que para mí ha sido una experiencia más, y para todos los que hemos podido repartir las semillas también va a ser otra experiencia más. El tiempo de la que le llamamos el huracán Julia, yo, como le digo, descontroladamente todas las milpas las vi en el suelo. Y ahí me vine a ver y vi que la mía, el pedazo de maíz, no lo había botado. Y ahí todito estaba, y resistente al viento y al tiempo, resistente a la lluvia y todo. Es bien resistente, porque como le digo, uno es por las pobrezas, no le da el bien tratamiento en el asunto del abono, pero fue bien ventajoso la semilla esa. Y he repartido a la mayoría de gente que me ha pedido, y todavía tengo unos encargos que todavía tengo que dar, porque se trata de compartir y sacar la buena semilla de ahí para seguir produciéndola. Y mantener una semilla que a la hora que queremos sembrar la vamos a sembrar.
Pues bien contenta con esta variedad que hemos estado probando en esta parcela. Es la primera vez que probamos Santa Cruz Porrillo. Me ha gustado porque ha sido muy resistente al cambio climático, en parte a la sequía y luego a las fuertes lluvias que tuvimos, y ha sido bastante buena. La dulzura del elote ha estado muy bueno también. Y pues ahora estamos ya sacando lo que es el maíz, que está muy bonito también. Vamos a seguir trabajando con él. Y la idea es seguirlo distribuyendo con los demás agricultores, productores de esta zona, ¿verdad? Ojalá que mucha gente más lo siga probando, porque sé que les va a gustar.
Pues el apoyo del CENTA ha sido mucho beneficioso para la comunidad, porque antes, como también pagaba, que desconocíamos de los técnicos. Ahora como que más acercamiento hay a las comunidades. Eso ayuda, como les digo, a enseñarle más al agricultor, a las técnicas. Y entonces al final se va aprendiendo y se va mejorando en el asunto de la cosecha, el trato al cultivo, plagas, todo eso ayuda. Pero para mí quizás sería beneficioso que siguieran los proyectos, porque ayuda al agricultor, de todas formas, a capacitarlo. Desconocíamos lo que es trabajar la tierra, solo, como dicen, el fósforo y la chapoda. Pero ahora con el nuevo método es diferente. Y quizás, les digo que agradecido, y si pudieran de vuelta pues regresar, quizás sería bueno. Motivar a todos los agricultores porque se trata de ahorita, porque al final, si no la cuidamos, no nos va a dar producción. Y de ella vivimos, pues, a ser honestos.
Estamos reuniendo acá de la prevención. Siempre que hablemos de políticas públicas que generen prevenir un determinado problema es la mejor estrategia. Hacer esta clase de trabajo demuestra también el interés que tenemos nosotros los técnicos paraguayos, una institución como el SENADE, que justamente una de sus misiones es evitar que entre algunas plagas o enfermedades que nosotros no tenemos, y si llega a buscar la forma de que no genere una afectación al desarrollo del rubro o a la parte económica.
...135 países en el mundo producen hoy plátano y banano. Estamos hablando de más de la mitad del planeta. Uno compara los datos del Censo Agropecuario 2008-2022, es tal vez el cultivo con mayor crecimiento del Paraguay. Más de 40 millones de dólares exportados al año, 16.000 hectáreas, está creciente. Por eso para nosotros es muy importante trabajar en este ejercicio.
Nos encontramos en Tembiaporá, en Paraguay, celebrando el simulacro regional para los países de la COSABE como parte de la estrategia que se viene desarrollando en América Latina para prepararse, así como la contención de la marcitez por fusarium en la raza 4 tropical. Estamos CENAVE, productores y además organismos internacionales.
Es muy importante esta simulación que está haciendo acá en esta zona. Adelante tenemos que estar preparados para cualquier situación de enfermedades.
Este ejercicio, los expertos están haciendo énfasis en sintomatología típica, procesos de vigilancia, utilizando las herramientas que proporciona la inteligencia artificial, y también están haciendo mucho énfasis en lo que se debe hacer para erradicar un foco utilizando las medidas de bioseguridad que son esenciales.
Una vida mejor para las personas, sin dejar a nadie atrás. Durante la última conferencia regional de la FAO, celebrada en Georgetown, Guyana, los 33 Estados miembros aprobaron unánimemente 4 prioridades regionales interconectadas que mejoran otra dimensión que contribuyen a la transformación de los sistemas agroalimentarios y que guían la organización hasta 2026. América Latina y el Caribe es la región más desigual, con índices de pobreza rural que afectan desproporcionadamente a las mujeres y a los pueblos indígenas. La exposición a múltiples que aumentan rápidamente está haciendo que los sistemas agroalimentarios sean vulnerables a diferentes crisis y choques, afectando los medios de vida rurales, especialmente para la agricultura familiar. En América Latina y el Caribe, el 25% de la población se identifica como indígena o afrodescendiente, mientras que las mujeres constituyen el 36% de los trabajadores del sistema. En la región, la FAO trabaja por una mejor vida, priorizando una transformación rural inclusiva a través de acciones dirigidas a acelerar la inversión y la cooperación internacional. Erradicar la pobreza rural y reducir las desigualdades es fundamental para impulsar un desarrollo económico que ofrezca oportunidades juntos para reducir las desigualdades para un futuro más sostenible y resiliente.
En un mundo donde la seguridad alimentaria es esencial, las amenazas fitosanitarias representan un desafío para la región de Centroamérica. Por eso, desde la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura, FAO, en conjunto con el Organismo Internacional Regional de Sanidad Agropecuaria, o IRSA, y expertos mundiales, se realizan simulacros regionales sobre respuesta a la langosta voladora.
Estamos en la parte de Quinchín, una de las zonas donde realmente pasan las mangas de langosta, las que se dirigen hacia Campeche. Lo que hacemos para que con ayuda de ellos y con ayuda de nosotros podamos localizar fácilmente lo que son las mangas de langosta.
Una parte esencial de este esfuerzo es la creación de mapas de riesgo epidemiológico, que ayudan a identificar las áreas más vulnerables y a anticipar posibles brotes, así como talleres de análisis del riesgo. El principal espacio nos evaluar asegurar que esté mejor preparado para una emergencia sanitaria.
Mi nombre es Verónica Chávez, trabajo para el Servicio de Protección Agropecuaria en Guatemala por parte de OIRSA y en conjunto con el Ministerio de Agricultura, Ganadería y Alimentación. Actualmente estamos haciendo un simulacro frente a situaciones de emergencia y estamos identificando qué hacer frente a presencia de plaga de langosta centroamericana. Ha sido muy importante y significativa, ya que como una persona joven y también como mujer, me ayuda a romper ciertas brechas que en mi país pues actualmente lamentablemente existen. Puedo adquirir en estas actividades, también puedo enfrentar ciertas carencias que podemos tener desde el punto de vista del conocimiento y poder crear nuevos proyectos en conjunto con compañeros que ya tengan mucha más experiencia para poder incluir a más gente joven, a más mujeres en este tipo de situaciones.
Con iniciativas como este simulacro, avanzamos hacia sistemas agroalimentarios más resilientes y sostenibles, alineados con los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible.
Para nosotros ha sido de gran importancia la presencia de diferentes organismos nacionales de protección fitosanitaria de la región de Mesoamérica. Este simulacro nos ha permitido articular todas las estrategias para el manejo en la langosta centroamericana. Y de esta manera poder continuar las acciones enfocadas fundamentalmente bajo la prevención del riesgo fitosanitario en nuestra región, así como las mejores estrategias de manejo que hemos venido trabajando también esta semana diferentes escenarios en las distintas estrategias, teniendo en cuenta los temas relacionados con el cambio climático hacia la gestión de riesgos, de manera que finalmente estamos articulando las 4 mejoras bajo el marco estratégico de la FAO para esta agenda de una salud.
Cinco claves para combatir la resistencia a los antimicrobianos, también conocida como RAM. Políticas para el combate contra la RAM bajo el enfoque Una sola salud. Significa promover el abordaje integrado de la salud de las personas, animales y del medio ambiente. Aumentar el financiamiento. Es fundamental asignar más recursos para acciones efectivas en la lucha contra la resistencia antimicrobiana. Mejorar los sistemas de vigilancia y compartir datos. Invertir en monitoreo eficaz es vital para entender y así combatir la resistencia antimicrobiana. Reforzar la normativa y la legislación. Establecer leyes más estrictas sobre el uso y eliminación de antimicrobianos es clave para proteger el medio ambiente. Apoyar el trabajo multisectorial. La colaboración y el sector privado es esencial para generar conciencia del comportamiento, sobre el uso de antibióticos bajo profesional médica o veterinaria. Es hora. Comparte este video, infórmate y únete al combate contra la resistencia a los antimicrobianos. Juntos podemos hacer la diferencia.
Necesitamos mejor nutrición para las personas, para el planeta. Durante la última celebrada en Georgia, probaron unánimemente 4 prioridades regionales interconectadas que reflejan las 4 mejoras de la FAO. 4 dimensiones que contribuyen a la transformación de los sistemas agroalimentarios y que guiarán a la organización en América Latina y el Caribe hasta 2026. La región enfrenta desafíos para combatir el hambre y la malnutrición. Aunque el número de personas que sufren hambre disminuyó ligeramente en 2023, 41 millones de personas en la región aún la sufren. América Latina y el Caribe registran el costo más alto de una dieta saludable en comparación con los promedios mundiales.
Todas y todos les damos la más
Good
cordial
morning, everyone. Welcome to the regional, welcome to the meeting of women and for women in the Agrifood Systems. So this is a publication from FAO that comes at a key time of revision of global commitments and regional commitments in terms of gender equality. Today, we put at the center the debate and the multiple gaps faced by rural women that are young, indigenous, and Afro-descendant in the access, participation, and the leadership within the agro-food systems. But also, I'd like to highlight their great capacity of resilience, innovation, and transformation. We'd like to remember that this event has simultaneous interpreting from Spanish into English, and you can change and choose the language at the bottom of the website in FAO's America. So share your comments and questions in the chat of the live transmission on YouTube. And those will be addressed in a session close to the end of the event. So to begin, I have the honor of presenting Maya Sakai, leader of Regional Program of FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean, who's going to be addressing us as a welcoming session. Go ahead, Maya. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to me to welcome you to the launching of the regional report, the situation of women in the agri-food systems. This is a regional target for Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to greet our guest, Mr. Nidia Pesantes, representative of the Office of UN Women in Bolivia and leader of the Regional Hub of Gender, Environment, and Climate Justice. And her presence today in this space reinforces the importance of the strategic alliances to go forwards with a common agenda. I also would like to thank the participation of the rural leaders, representatives, and different workers of governments, the UN system, and everyone who is with us here today. This report that we present today to the region It is a fundamental tool to give visibility, have some incidents, and mobilize. And this comes at a key time because we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Platform of Action in Beijing, the 50 years of the first World Conference on Women. And we are at portals of the International Year of Farming Women, summoned by the General Assembly of the United Nations for 2026. Its publication also becomes more important facing the next COP30 in Belém, Brazil, to position with greater strength the role of rural women in the sustainability and resilience of the territories. This report offers a rigorous analysis, an updated analysis on the persistent inequalities faced by rural women, indigenous women, also Afro-descendant women and young women, and their participation in the agri-food systems in Latin America and the Caribbean. It is done from solid data, substantial evidence, and an intersectional point of view that gives visibility to the multiple barriers that limit their full development. Women continue facing unequal access to land, to credit, to technology, to services for advocacy, to market, and dedicate more than double the time to domestic labor and care work that is unpaid, which in turn limits their economic autonomy and access to greater opportunities. This report stresses how the gender roles, public policies, and institutional practices condition the capacity of women to play roles of leadership, make strategic decisions, and develop their productive potential in the agri-food systems. Through concrete examples in a region, the document also gives visibility, such as the increase in the availability of disaggregated data broken down by sex, and the promotion of normative frameworks and more inclusive, gender-sensitive, intersectional public policies. So therefore, this report is not just a diagnosis. It proposes a number of actions that are transformative, oriented to closing the structural gender gaps. At the same time, it shows how the empowering of women, it is a strategic path to strengthen food security and nutritional security as well, and make rural economies more dynamic, promote sustainable development, and also improve the well-being of our societies. It calls us to double our efforts to accelerate the implementation of transformative policies and also work in a coordinated way among governments, international bodies, civil society, private sector, so we can close these gender gaps and guarantee that no rural, indigenous, Afro-descendant, or young woman is left behind. So the evidence that we share today needs to be an important input for the decision-making process. We need public policies that are transformative, that promote the economic empowerment of rural women in all of their diversity, that acknowledge their multiple roles in the production, trade, and care, and ensure their equal access to services, resources, and participation. From FAO, we reinforce our commitment to the rights of women, of rural women, to progress towards agri-food systems that function better for them. These initiatives, such as the farm schools with a stress in gender, the accompanying of public policies that also have a target in gender in the region, and the promotion to leadership and collective action of women are part of the efforts that we're trying to carry forth in collaboration with multiple stakeholders. I would like to invite you to make the most out of this space for dialogue, reflection, and joint building, and that we can continue moving forward towards agri-food systems where rural women can work fully and exercise their rights and also make the most out of their potential and leave nobody behind. Thank you very much. We'd like to deeply thank Maya Takai for highlighting the key role of rural women as an engine for food security and sustainability, an essential message facing the International Year of Farming Women. Now, I would like to give the floor to Hilary Sisto, Officer of Gender and Development of FAO, who is joining us today to give us a general overview. Thank you very much, Hilaria.
Muchas gracias y por favor pueden
Thank you very much. If you can please share my presentation.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be with you today. I've lived in Latin America for 6 years, and the region is in my heart. And I've worked a lot, 2.5 years in Santiago. So thank you very much for this invitation. And I would like to speak a bit more what is the commitment of FAO to make equality grow. Please, next slide. My presentation, I would like to explain what has been the main result of the report on the situation of women in agri-food systems at a global level. And also, I would like to quickly share what is the commitment to make equality grow, the voluntary guidelines on gender equality, and the empowering of women and children, and women and girls, and also talk about the celebration of the International Year of Farming Women. Next slide, please. So here we'd like to start sharing data. This is data from 2019, where we have seen that women represent 36% of the women working are employed in agri-food systems, and together with 38% of men employed are in the farming systems. This percentage of women has increased to 1 or 2% more in the last years. Agri-food systems are a greater source of income for women rather than for men in the low and medium income countries. Here we can see in the case of sub-Saharan Africa, 66% of women working are employed in the system, and 71% are in other areas as well. So the participation, we have seen that the participation of women in agricultural activities has decreased. If you compare the data from 2025 and 2019, in the last 20 years, it has decreased, and also there is no evidence on the feminization of agriculture from which we so often talk. Please, next slide. If we consider the working condition of women in the agri-food systems, sadly, the conditions are way worse than the conditions of men. The works they perform are usually irregular, informal, oftentimes are part-time. Also, they are poorly qualified jobs. They're very labor-intensive. And on top of that, they're also vulnerable. So therefore, women are more marginalized, the work conditions are worse, and they're more vulnerable compared to men. Also, if we consider the working hours, we can see that men work more hours than women in the agri-food systems in agriculture. Women in general have fewer possibilities than men of working full-time jobs in the agri-food system in every region of the world. As I said before, the work conditions are a lot worse than men's. And also, at a global level, we have seen that women make 82 cents per every dollar that men make. So, in agriculture, and all of this contributes to making the situation even worse for women. If we consider access to assets and resources, we see that women have less access. 10 years ago, before this report, we had done another report on the situation of women in agriculture. So it was way more targeted on the previous report. And we have seen that compared to 10 years, 12 years ago, the situation continues to be very poor in terms of access to land, goods, services. And we have done some progress at a global level in terms of access to the financial services, access to internet, and mobile access as well. But for the most part, we still have a lot of problems. And the fact that we still have this strong gap that has an impact not only in women themselves, but also their households and the economy at a national and global level. Next slide, please. Why is all this? Because all of this happens because the standards and social rules are still very discriminating towards women, and they affect negatively women and girls. And this is mostly the cause of inequality that we see. We know that these social norms take very long to be changed. We also have a lot of we believe that if women work in a job, their children will suffer. In a lot of cultures, it's still accepted that women can be beaten. And even when we prepare the global report, what we could see analyzing the world policies is that 75% of all of the documents that we've analyzed on policies and agri-food systems acknowledge the challenges of women. But when we consider what type of policy they have, what policies have a specific objective that is gender-related, 75%, we're going down to 19% of the ones that actually do something about it. So also last year, we've published this report on unjust climate, where we wanted to analyze what is the situation of women in terms of impact in the economic crisis. We have seen that in general, especially data from Africa, that women reduce fewer than men their hours of work in agriculture. The most affected people by climate change are especially women, young people, and marginalized people and poor people. As we see here, we've estimated that thermal stress can increase the gap between the incomes of households that are led by women or men in $37 billion, and that the impact of floods can affect $16 billion per year. We've seen that an increase of 1 degree of the mean temperature can be associated with a reduction of 34% of the incomes of women-led households compared to men-led households. So we have a lot of data, a lot of evidence showing that the gender gap is still very strong. So what are the aspects that the global report we have been highlighting in terms of policies? First of all, that we need to adopt as much as possible a transformative gender focus to try to change what are the social norms that are more discriminatory. We also need to see how can we close the gap of land ownership, because this is going to have a lot of impact in terms of access to services, financial resources, and greater benefits in terms of employment, investment, and also at the end of the day, in terms of food security. And this can also reduce the problems of gender violence. Also, we need to give more access to family and daycare, because this should allow women to dedicate more to jobs, and it can also increase the incomes of mothers in the agri-food systems. We saw that many times the project of the Dimitra, that the gender focus or like group focus is very important to increase empowering, and that we need to see how can we invest ever more in social protection to increase the employment of women and improve resilience. So the recommendation of the global report is that we need to invest more in high quality data. We need to have interventions in scale to close the gaps of assets and resources, and we need to have interventions that are intentional, that are targeting empowering. And with that, we can increase the incomes of 58 million people, and also increase the resilience of 235 million additional people. So before finishing, I would like to share very quickly what are the commitments. After the preparation of the report at a global level last year, the General Director of FAO has launched this initiative of commitment to make equality grow and the empowering of women in the agri-food systems through financing and associations. This is a process involving a lot of organizations in the private and public sector and other UN agencies and many organizations. And the commitments are to increase the leadership of women in the agri-food systems, reducing the wage gaps, and reducing the differences of productivity in the agri-food systems. Next slide, please. Last year, also, after many negotiations, we approved the guidelines for gender equality and the empowering of women and girls. And for this year, for 2026, we want to support the adoption of the voluntary guidelines at least in 10 countries. And this year, we have selected 4, including Colombia. And the last one to end we're starting everything so we can do the celebration of the National Year of Farming Women in 2026. That is going to be launched in October, all of it. And this is to create awareness on the multiple and crucial roles of agriculture in the agri-food system and see what can we do to close the gender gap and guide investment policies. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hilaria, for sharing the structural vision on gender inequality in agri-food systems and also the necessary transformation. To make this grow even more, we will go deeper in the regional report and the implications in the Latin America and the Caribbean by Claudia Brito, Officer of Policies, expert in gender, social, and institutional topics at the Regional Office of FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean. Please go ahead, Claudia. Hello, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I would like to greet all of our guests who join me here at the table, as well the people who are online, together with my colleague, Nidia Pesantes from UN Women, and also everyone who's following through the networks of FAO, and we're connected and also connected through technology. Thank you, Hilaria, for giving this general overview. I would like to begin saying that many of the trends, the global trends of this report are replicated in our region. So this means that unfortunately, women in the world at a level of all over our planet now still leaving challenges, important challenges in the agri-food systems.
FAO's vision for this report to come out at the agri-food system is also related with a vision to extend, to broaden the perspective of our organization regarding the fact that agriculture, of course, is a critical part of agri-food systems, but an agri-food system contains many other elements which are critical. Furthermore, the most important thing is to understand the situation of women in that framework, based on access, on distribution of food, on food production, even consumption, and the environment where all these feeding patterns actually happen are critical. And Latin America would also like to make a special point there regarding this topic. Next one, please. I know it's a pleasure for us today to launch this part of the report, which includes exclusively information for Latin America and the Caribbean. Of course, we will always have the references of the global report when we want to do a comparative or benchmark, right? As Hilaria was talking about the analysis of what happens in sub-Saharan Africa, what's happening in other regions. But we are fortunate enough to have the regional reports already, as Maya mentioned, and I don't want to repeat what she mentioned. But what this report brings is mainly key data, which is updated, which is critical to understand the situation of women. And within this framework, it's got a specific analysis, and it puts into context the contextualizes the region, and it evidences what works or what could work or what has worked truly in our regions and in other countries. It's about how we improve the situation of women within the framework of public policies. And I believe that that is critical. And the investments that we need in the agri-food systems, it talks about that too. Let's continue. Structure of the report. The report has 6 parts. An introduction. There's a second part where we talk about gender and work in agri-food systems, which is one of the key aspects, even more because it's got quite a strong link. with the private sector. The access of women to goods, resources, and services, just something that we've examined some of these gaps. In addition to these gaps, we also have opportunities that we should observe, and we should look at them as ways for transforming the situation of women in our regions. Next one, please. The fourth chapter here is the capacity of action that women have in their communities and territories, and the regulations that continue affecting the life of women and the environments of financial empowerment and development, right, in the world of rurality. But we should also talk about the women who are not only in rural areas, but also in urban areas, because Agrifood Systems, as you very well know, are not only rural, but they are urban and peri-urban. And that's where we talk about public policies come in, right? Also, number 5, resiliency and adaptation, because climate change is affecting us, right? And it's a reality. And not only climate change, but also the health themes, like the disturbances that we've had with COVID-19, right? The pandemic, this entire world of the pandemic and the health sector. Number 6, we have transforming the agri-food systems and reaching gender equality, proposing some different work approaches, specific ones that also leap towards the vision that we had and the prior vision we had of work, of labor, with autonomy and empowerment of women, because they seek to address the regulations, norms, and their, as Ilaria mentioned before. What happens in Latin America? We say that in Latin America, we've got the feminization of water and malnourishment, of hunger, sorry, it's extreme malnourishment, and also malnourishment due to lack, which in this case is hunger. We have feminization of care and feminization of poverty. The data's all here in terms of food, nutritional food insecurity that is moderate, is mild or severe. It increased 4.1 percentage points from 2014 to 11.5 percentage points in 2021. Here, there's also the influence that the COVID-19 pandemic that we cannot leave aside, which is also related with these analytics. How prepared are we or not to face these type of situations? And we've got climate change adhered to that. In 2022, this lowered, came in a downward trend, which is good news, but it was still of 9.1 percentage points. What is it? What does that mean? That much of what was done in Latin America during the pandemic period, and there's some countries that are flagships in this, right, like Chile, Colombia, which were they created specific policies for women in the employment sector, in the workforce, in the sector where many women are related to the agri-food sectors, right? That they impacted in the lowering of hunger rates. We still, or famine rates, right? We still don't have that much evidence on this, specific evidence, but we know when that feminization of poverty, water, and cares are reduced with public policies, we also reduce hunger. Due to the influence that women have in terms of their families and at a community level also in terms of nutritional food security. Let's continue. In terms of employment, in Latin America, we have 36% of our workforce which work in the agri-food systems of Latin America who are women and Latin America and the Caribbean. This gives us conveys two messages. First of all, that public policies are quite important because public policies also include the employment policies, but we need to attract other types of partnerships, for example, with the private sector, to improve the work conditions of women. And Ilaria already presented some of these in the case of women who are in the agri-food systems and women who produce, or producers specifically, right? Most women work outside of the agricultural sector. That's another aspect that we must consider. Despite the fact that it is important to have programs or concrete investments in women who produce, because we know that they're in family agriculture, family farming, and agroecology, women who are producing clean food for sustainability and food security. We also know that many women are in agri-food systems and an extended agri-food system. Therefore, there's a trend from the FAO to open to all these discussions. We reflect on the sectors that need to be engaged in our discussion in the region. This is key. Women lead the food manufacturing system in 55% and in trade in 52%. Nevertheless, and this is quite interesting piece of data, the most for-profit sectors and the sectors that have a high level of efficiency in the region, like transport and the agri-food systems, only 9% of these are profitable sectors. Like transport is only 9% females or women, right? So we need to turn this around. We need to use these sectors as ways and paths for women to access work positions that generate more profit and what we call fair work conditions or labor. The women's work conditions, and I will not stop here because Hilaria already mentioned this, but in the region, we conducted a study some years ago about the season workers, right? And who evidenced these work conditions. We still can't talk about these conditions of fair work conditions in the region, right? There are many women who are temporary workers or seasonal workers with hiring conditions which are quite irregular, and this invites us to this broader discussion, yet again, where we need to extend our partners and allies and public policies, and not only public ones, but also private policies. Let's continue. Women's access to good services and resources. Again, we've got legal protection, which is another critical topic on land tenure. Hilaria already mentioned this. We did a study on indicator 5A2 of the SDGs of Agenda 2030. It's a indicator 5A1, sorry, in the 15, where we observed 15 countries of Latin America, and despite the fact that we have some countries that have protect women access to land and co-ownership has been critical there. Despite this, we've got other countries where we also have to act fast on the legal protection of women. And there's another strategic partner there who are parliaments. We're also working with the representatives from Parliament to continue amending or modifying the legal protection of women. We need to continue extending it. We need to be broader, and for our region, reach a high level protection there. In all countries that reported indicator 5A1, which has to do with access, women's access in land tenure, we observed a greater percentage of men than women who are landowners. In Latin America, for now, for the time being, no country exceeds 30% access to land, women's access to land. No, they don't exceed that. That's the last data that we have in what we've analyzed throughout the region. And I'd like to mention this because it's key in terms of legal protection. There's a perfect binomial between women's legal protection and the access to land. If we do not protect the part of the regulatory part, if we don't work on the legal frameworks, access to land is it's quite complex, challenging. In addition, in this indicator, there are some things that we're not addressing, which is the quality of land, right? That women's access to quality of land, because we actually have Dr. Gloria here who will talk about that. She's a specialist, and she'll talk about that. And the quantity of land that women have, right, which normally just for production, which normally does not exceed 5 hectares. The gaps to the access to technology, despite the fact that in Latin America it's improved, I must say this. For the time being, there's a greater possibility in the case of rural women, and well, it's increased the possibility of people having access to a mobile phone. It's still increased throughout the world, but for rural women, the possibilities that they have lower possibilities of having a smartphone or a phone, right? So when we talk about there being improvement in women's access to phones and to technology, we must also differentiate. There's another layer, right? We must differentiate between women who live in rural areas and women who live in urban areas, and also men versus women. But it's worth noting, and we must understand that technology is also a driver, a path through which we could also improve women's conditions in rural areas. I mentioned, this was mentioned already, I don't want to repeat it, but we continue having these gaps throughout the region. We're going to add something here, which is livestock property or ownership, and there are other sectors where we who have studied in Latin America, like the poultry sector, where women are still they're still behind in terms of ownership, which are production chains that we need to pay attention to because they're important in many sectors. It's the beekeeping sector and the poultry farming. I will not stop that much on this because possibly my peer will talk about this later. But in the case of Latin America, the ratio of women versus men who work on domestic non-paid, right? Work it's alarming the time they spend on this, the overburden of work, of domestic work and non-paid work. And it's so unequal. We want to have state projects in our region and for women to truly be able in farms to have all these access, right? Because we all deserve and we should be careful and we need to care. Everyone needs to care for the elderly, for women, for men and children. We need to be cared for, and as a right, it cannot be burdened. Women cannot be burdened with this. Now let's continue and maybe close with this. All these tensions that still happen related to climate change, right? Which Ilaria mentioned, they affect us in Latin America, right? The different disturbances and tension factors. And as Latin America and the Caribbean, we're one of the most affected regions by these situations like floods, all of the ways that could affect us related to the events of climate change in Latin America. Latin America is one of the regions that's the most affected. Therefore, adaptation and response processes, but also resilience processes, which are one of the things that we'd like to note here, that we women, we want to have climate justice. And to speak about climate justice, we must talk about a resilient way of doing things at a resilient reach. So we need more investment for women's situations into adaptation and resilience processes, not only for women, but for their communities, because there's a virtuous circle here. When that work is done as a community level with the leadership of women at the core of decision making. Next one, please. We have politics and institutions. Latin America has advanced in public policies, maybe in agriculture-based ones, as Ilaria mentioned, but we're incorporating, adding some concepts, some gender objectives or targets, but we've also advanced on specific public policies. And I'd like to stop here because I believe there's a trend in Latin America. We in FAO, along with other agencies, have been supporting decisively the different countries in the region for developing specific legislation for rural women, but also the creation, development of public policies in the agriculture sector and other sectors as climate change of different countries, right, in the agribusiness sector, looking for these interconnections between topics to strengthen the women's agenda and women's rights and needs in farms. So that integration of gender policies is critical. Nowadays, we cannot only talk about the agricultural livestock sector or the climate policy of a country if we don't talk about integrating gender equality policies and gender equality and agri-food systems like laws and regulations, nutritional regulations, and food security regulations in our countries. And we need to integrate that into the parliament representatives of the region. So what are the keys for transformation, right? And with this, we will start concluding this intervention. The first thing we have is data. We see that we're obtaining data, countries are producing data, we are reaping the benefits of the data to design public policies, but we need to improve that availability of information. For example, Ilaria talked about women in agriculture, but we still don't have information on how much and which ones they are, right? With a greater specificity, what's the situation of women there? So there's some data that we still need. We need to improve the intersectional data. We need to look at what's happening with women, indigenous women, what's happening with Afro descendants, and what's happening in the territory to create more inclusive policies. The transforming gender-focused programs, which is a vision of change of all those social regulations and the prejudice that are still rooted within communities and territories and these people. We need to modify all that, and also in institutions, because let's just mention this in public and private institutions. I believe that this is a topic we need to continue working on. And the gender transforming approaches allow this. From FAO, we've had an approach which is quite clear, an approach to this, and there's much methodology developed, and there are examples on how public policies can be transformed.
The overload of domestic work, we can't leave it out. We can't leave outside the women and the systems of care and the women, the farm sites. If we allow this to happen, then we are leaving a huge number of women out, and we're leaving an important strength, a transformative force. We're leaving it outside of the discussion and the possibilities of change that are so big in our countries and the regions. So in the framework of the development of countries, the social, political, and economic development, and also change in the models we would like to be modifying. So this is already the last one. Exactly. Let's go to the last public policies, the most inclusive public policies. So these are the main recommendations, and I believe the issue of strengthening the processes for technical training and capacities of women is key in the agri-food systems. We need to promote the insertion of women in the most profitable sectors of the agri-food systems. This is key, facilitating their inclusion and active participation of the organizations of producers, or women who are also in the co-op world, who are in the unionized world, because these are the women that are also in the waged world, and there we also need to have an intervention in. These are alliances that we need to promote in order to make this transformation happen. And of course, land ownership is key, access to technological resources, and in a framework of social protection, that is, where we promote decent jobs, trying to get autonomy of women in the region, in the agri-food system. So thank you very much for your attention, and let's continue. We have a second part now, which is our main course. Thank you, Claudia, for this complete presentation that brings down some key aspects and data of the region. Let's go now to the main segment of this event, and to guide this dialogue, I am pleased to introduce Catalina Ivanovic, specialist in the empowering of rural women of the Regional Office of FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much, Constanza. It is a pleasure to me to be able to be in charge of this panel, where we are going to be talking about this regional report on the situation of women in the agro-food systems, with a special emphasis in the situation of Latin America and the Caribbean. For FAO, it is very important to provide visibility to the role and the contributions that women have in the agro-food systems. We've just got to know this in the presentations done by Claudia and Ilaria, and for the same reason, we like to expose and show the reality they live, and we will do so through this panel that has the objective of, therefore, knowing more of the situation that women live from their own voices. So I now go to introduce those who are joining us today. So in alphabetic order, we start with Juana Ferrer. She is part of the National Confederation of Women Organization of the Countryside, CONAMUCA, from the Dominican Republic. in the role of General Coordinator of this organization. It is a pleasure to have you with us, Juana. We also have the presence of Gloria Irene Aviles, who has the beautiful role or position of being a soil doctor. She is a member of the World Alliance for Soil, and she is coming to talk to us from Ecuador. We also have Tamisha Lee with us, a president of the Jamaican Network of Rural Women Producers, or JNRWP. And we also have Tania Basilica Vera, who is a member of the Regional Indigenous Coordinator, CRI, specifically in charge of the area of women and youth in this organization in Paraguay, and she's joining us all the way from Paraguay. I would like to let you know a bit more how this panel is organized. So this panel is made up by a number of questions that we're going to be posing for our panel members, and they will have 5 minutes to answer these questions. I would like to comment as well for those who are joining us online that we would like to invite you to ask your own questions on the chat. Veronica and Yuni will be supporting us by gathering from the chat all of these questions. So let's begin then with Juana Ferrer from the National Confederation of Organizations of Countryside Women, CONAMUCA, from the Dominican Republic. Juana, can you please tell us, from your experience in CONAMUCA, what characteristics and ways of actions do the organizations of rural women have that have been effective in the achievement of their demands? You have 5 minutes.
Buenos días para
Good
todas.
morning, everyone.
Para la Confederación
For
Nacional
me
de
and for the National Confederation of Women in the Countryside, CONAMUCA, it is a great joy that in the framework of this celebration of International Year of Rural Women, because we want to be doing this meeting and of colleagues, well, fighters, and also thanks to FAO and thanks to the members who are joining us today, people who have been sharing studies and reports, and I believe all of this is greatly valuable to have all of this information available. So, well, CONAMUCA is one of the most important organizations of women in Latin America and the Caribbean, of women from the countryside as well, but we are part of all of the spaces of the feminist movement, the movement for health, the international farmers movement, and the international coordinator of countryside organizations for countryside life. And from those spaces, we have been able to manage to get this going, even get some responses for going forwards in achievements based in the problems that we're facing, that you have also mentioned. We have done great contributions in the design of public policies and in the framework or in the legal framework as well, to try to get greater opportunities and lifestyle and livelihood changes for countryside women, and also generally speaking about women, because there's an alliance of CONAMUCA as the women of the city in that thing we call the Countryside City Alliance. We're organizing ourselves in 1981, where we celebrated the first meeting. Then the formal constitution of CONAMUCA was in 1996, November 1st, and there we did our first congress, and this was a celebration of the life and struggle of Floria Salo, who is our guidelines. So CONAMUCA gathers more than 12,000 women in 23 provinces of the country and about 300 communities of farming women. Despite the contribution that we do to the agri-food systems and in addressing problems and needs from the communities and the territories, women continue being the most exploited ones and the most excluded people of everything related to rights
que nos asisten, que nos corresponden.
that correspond to us.
Con
So
relación a la pregunta, y
we get
discúlpame el
related to the
preámbulo,
question, and I'm sorry about the long introduction. So
importante
one of the most important
en la
actions
que
that
nos involucramos las mujeres campesinas
in which we as farming women get involved in at a level of the country and a level or at an international level as well is in the political training, the
agroecología
training in
sobre los
agroecology,
derechos sexuales y los derechos
on the
reproductivos
sexual and reproductive rights that have allowed us to acquire the knowledge to demand rights,
exigir los derechos humanos de las
to
mujeres,
demand the human rights of women,
de
and
alguna manera también los
in a
derechos
way
de las
also
familias en los
the rights of families in the territories and community.
Desarrollamos el Instituto de Agroecología,
So
que es un instituto
we developed this Institute of Agroecology, which is not only from the Dominican Republic, but it is an institute from the Caribbean, as FAO knows already. And the networks of agroecological institutes done in Latin America, such as Brazil, Venezuela, where this started off, this whole process of this institute, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Nicaragua, Honduras, and others, such as the Dominican Republic, as it would be Mamatingo,
que es de Caribe, como decía, pero que
which is
se
from the Caribbean,
desarrolla
as we know, but it is developed
un instituto de la región
as
Caribe.
an institute from the Caribbean
Por otro
region.
lado, tenemos que decir
So on the other hand, we have to
todas
say
esas
that
tareas que hemos asumido
all of
en
those tasks we have taken on in strengthening of
para implementar
capacities
iniciativas
for
productivas,
implementing productive
agregar
initiatives,
valor a esas iniciativas
add
productivas,
value to this productive
para
initiative,
implementar el desarrollo económico
to increase economic development of rural women.
también de los
This
aspectos
is one of the important aspects that we have started off with. So,
digamos que la lucha por la
the
soberanía
struggle for food sovereignty as well, but not only the fight in the training, in the creation of awareness, social mobilization, but we as organization, I'm sorry, we need to be wrapping up your intervention.
Entonces decía que la soberanía
So I was
alimentaria
saying
también
that food sovereignty also in the implementation of policies, the alliances with other organizations at farm level have been very important. For us also
la integración,
is the integration, the mass integration of women in all economic, social, and political aspects in the country, but it also related to.
Esa es la primera pregunta, ¿verdad?
This is the first question, isn't it?
Con relación a la segunda,
So related to the second one, Juana, I'm so sorry. No, the second question is in the second round, sorry. So with that, I close. Thank you very much. We'd like to continue with Gloria Irene Aviles, Doctor of Soils of the World Alliance for Soil, that is speaking to us from Ecuador. Gloria, from your practice as soil doctor, I would love to that you explain what is a soil doctor actually. Why is it important to maintain soil and what is your role in it?
Reciban un cordial y afectuoso saludo.
May you
Qué
all be
importante
greeted kindly from me. It's very important for me to be here, and from my perspective,
la importancia de darles a
and the
ustedes como
importance of giving you as panel members to greet you on behalf of my rural women from Ecuador. It is an honor to be with you, and thank FAO
y darnos ese
for
espacio
considering us and also give us a space so women also have this great opportunity of manifesting, and it is so clear that we play this important role as such. So going back to the question, why the importance of soil conservation? So within the soil conservation and why Doctor of Soil, two things here. First, we have been working and we have the experience and we have the experience in the countryside that has been allowed us to be selected
fuimos seleccionados
And
por
we
algunos
consider we
varones
were selected
para
by
estar
some
dentro de este
males
proceso.
to be within this
Pero es que
process.
hablar del suelo
But
es
speaking of soil
tema de
is
tanta
an
importancia
issue of so
porque
much
es hablar de la
importance
Pachamama,
because it's
es
about
hablar de
speaking about
parte de nuestra
Pachamama, it's
madre
about
tierra.
speaking about part of a
La
Mother
conservación del
Earth
suelo
and the
se
conservation
ve
of soils.
afectada
This
por
is
malas
affected
prácticas
by many
que se
poor
han venido
practices
dando
that
y
have
nosotros
been taking
conocemos
place, and we know
que una de las malas prácticas
that
que
one
se
of
han
the
venido dando
bad
justamente
practices that we have been
es
seeing
cultivos,
is
monocultivos, la
monocrops.
explotación o sobreexplotación,
The overexploitation and overuse of pesticides has been deteriorating soil quality. One of the greatest commitments that we acquire and that we have as women when dedicating ourselves to this type of work or is about recovering all the way to the ancestral practices so we can consider them as important within the work that we have already proposed. Within the management and what we get, which is what we've been doing for all of the women to get some visibility, recovering these spaces so we can leverage processes and how are we discussing this so much?
Del nivel gubernamental se
And
crea
also from the government level, we create a Ministry of Agriculture, and here we get the important role of doctors or the people who are knowledgeable on the soil, so we can leverage the big project that family agriculture is, AFC.
retoman el tema y
Women
lo hacen
take back on that topic and they make it the main topic within this work, and we speak of food safety. We work for that. Why?
la utilización de los bioinsumos.
The use of the biogoods. Again, women show up with that knowledge of making these practices with plant products, and we set up projects that are gonna be removing the use of pesticides because the use of pesticide has been degrading the life of human beings, of the ones we love, our families. And there, I would like to highlight what Ilaria was saying and Claudia on how have we been following and fighting for this. So step by step, can we face government policies? And for that, several of the acknowledgements that we have had, that we have for women, is this, the delivery of the work of this great project, which is AFC. So much so that we have been managing this from the basic food basket. Now, 65% of the products
seguridad alimentaria y lo
are
dan
related to food security, and these are given by rural women. 1 minute.
orgullosos de trabajar,
So
pero
they are proud to work here, but their idea is that we don't work for today, we work for the future generations, so they can have healthy food that is clean of pesticides with the warranty of improving the life conditions of our country. So that is why our biggest commitment is that even the countryside, we don't work the land, the city will not get food. They don't eat. So therefore, this is what we've always been saying, and we've been leveraging processes to strengthen the leadership of rural women. We have done that great process. That is why I would like to thank again, and now that we're celebrating the 50 years of the conference, the satisfaction that we have here and that the great commitment that we have for 2026, when we will be celebrating the Year of Rural Women. I believe we're all gonna be very happy from our angles to continue participating in that and continue leading great processes, but also adding day by after day to our women at this central topic, from the farm to the city.
Muy bien, Gloria. Fantástica
Very much,
intervención.
Gloria.
Gracias.
Great intervention. Thank you very much.
Quería ahora continuar
We would
con
like
Tamisha
to
Lee, quien
continue
es
with Tamisha
presidenta
Lee,
de
president of the producers women of Jamaica. Tamisha, I would like to ask you, why is it important that producer women are organized? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Good morning, everyone from Beijing. It is an immense honor to connect with you virtually from this vibrant city, a place where global conversations about our shared future are constantly shaping our world. As we gather, I am reminded of the spirit of collaboration and progress embodied in the Beijing Plus 30 Declaration, a testament to our collective commitment to advancing gender equality and empowering women worldwide. It is in that spirit that I stand before you today, representing the powerful, undeniable voice of Jamaican rural women producers. When we talk about the agri-food systems in Latin America and the Caribbean, the contributions and potential of women are not just significant, they are monumental. From our direct experience at the Jamaica Network of Rural Women Producers, the answer to why women organizing is crucial becomes strikingly clear. It's not merely beneficial, it's the very bedrock of empowerment and progress. For Jamaican women producers, organizing has been transformative for several key reasons. Firstly, collective action amplifies individual voices. Imagine a sector where women are often marginalized and their tireless efforts undervalued. A unified front transforms individual whispers into a powerful chorus, demanding recognition and equitable treatment from policymakers, market actors, and within our own communities. We are no longer unheard, we are undeniable. Secondly, organizations fosters an unparalleled environment of knowledge sharing and mutual support. Rural women often navigate similar complex challenges, access to land, credit, technology, and markets. Through networks like the Jamaica Network of Rural Women Producers, we've forged vital peer-to-peer learning environments. We've shared best practices, solved problems collectively, and offer crucial emotional and practical support. This isn't just about business, it is about building resilience and ensuring no one is left behind in a demanding sector. Thirdly, organization creates direct pathway for accessing resources and opportunities. As a collective, women producers wield greater bargaining power. We negotiate with buyers from a position of strength, access financial services tailored to our needs, and engage in value chain and previously felt inaccessible. We can pool resources, launch joint ventures, and advocate for targeted support programs that address our specific needs, leading to greater economic resilience and sustainability. Over back to you, Madam Chairman. Thanks.
Muchas gracias, Tamisha, y especialmente por
Thank you very
conectar
much,
con
Tamisha,
nosotros
especially for connecting with us from Beijing. We know that it's quite late out there, so thank you.
Tania Vera.
Let's continue with Tania Vera.
Tania
is a member of the Indigenous Regional Coordinator, CRI, and she's speaking to us from Paraguay. We would love for you to explain in the Indigenous Regional Coordinator from the experience in your community, what's the situation, what is your situation, and what are the main difficulties that Indigenous women face in communities, and how different is the situation for women, right, versus men? If you could give us a benchmark there. We've got 5 minutes, ma'am.
¿Cómo están? Yo soy
Hi,
Tania
how are
Vera,
you? I'm
miembro
Tania
ejecutiva de
Vera.
Unión Yeyo.
Soy del pueblo Aba Guaraní de la comunidad
The
indígena
Guara people from
Fortuna
the indigenous communities of
del distrito
Fortuna,
Curugatu, departamento
of the
Canembe.
Curvatura
Yo
district of the department Carambeju.
estoy como lideresa de
I'm here
juventud
as a
y mujer
leader
desde
for
muy
the youth
temprana
and
edad,
women
desde niña,
since I was a
y
child,
quisiera
really.
hablarles desde mi
And I
experiencia
wanted
con
to
los
talk about
proyectos
my experience
implementados
with
por el
the
gobierno en
projects implemented
colaboración
by the
y
government
financiamiento con la FAO, que
with
es el
in
proyecto
partnership with
Pobreza,
FAO, which
Pobreza,
is the project
Reforestación, Energía y
Poverty,
Cambio
Poverty,
Climático. Yo estoy
Reforestation,
ahí como representante
and
regional
Climate Change. I'm
de
here as a
mujeres
regional
indígenas
representative
y
for
juventudes,
Indigenous women
y
and the
cuando hubo
youth.
la asamblea yo solicité un
When
espacio
we
para
had an
mujeres y
assembly, I
jóvenes
requested a
y
space
sin
for
problema me
women and
otorgaron.
the youth, and
Yo
they gave me this
considero
space
que
without any
la
issues. I consider
principal
that
brecha u
the
barrera
main
que nosotros como mujeres
barrier
indígenas
or gap
tenemos
we have as
es
Indigenous
que no
women is
estamos formadas
that
todavía,
we are
preparadas,
not
que falta
trained yet.
muchísima capacitación
And we're not
para que
prepared.
nosotros
We're
podamos
looking
realmente
lacking
tener
training for us
la
to truly
oportunidad
be
de
able
poder
to
incidir
have the
en las
chance
políticas
of
públicas y también
impacting public
organizarnos
policies and
como mujeres
also
indígenas. ¿Por qué digo esto?
organize as
Porque
Indigenous
en
women. Why
ningún
am I saying this?
espacio donde
Because
yo he solicitado para que yo sea
I've
este
requested spaces
representante,
for me to be a
nunca me han
representative, and
rechazado
in
los
none of
hombres,
these
los
spaces,
líderes indígenas
the Indigenous leaders,
de sus comunidades, sino
men
más
from
bien
their
me han
communities, have
dado la
not rejected me.
oportunidad y han
They've always
escuchado mi
given me the
voz.
opportunity. And
Entonces
they've
yo
always heard my
considero eso,
voice.
que
So
hace
I
falta
consider
muchísima
that we're still
formación y
missing a lot
especialmente
of
también que
training.
ser mujer implica también
And
dejar
being a
el
woman
hogar, dejar
also
el
means
cuidado,
leaving the
ser
household, the
familia.
care,
Entonces, eso
and
también es una
families.
barrera
That's
para que las
why
mujeres
that's also
indígenas
a
puedan
barrier for Indigenous women to
participar en los espacios
truly
políticos.
participate in the
Esto,
political spaces
algunas
and
decisiones de las asambleas comunitarias
also
nos
in the
dimos
assembly
cuenta
of the
de eso, porque
community.
justamente la
And the
coordinadora
community
regional
assemblies, we
tiene el rol
realized
de
that because the
asegurar
regional coordinator has a role
la
of ensuring
implementación de
that
las
there's an
CCLPI en las
implementation of
comunidades indígenas.
CCLPI in
Entonces, en las
Indigenous
consultas,
communities.
en las comunidades,
So in the
nosotros teníamos que
consultations processes of
garantizar
the
que
communities, we
las
needed to
mujeres indígenas
ensure,
tengan
guarantee that
esa
Indigenous women
oportunidad de
have that
estar en esa
opportunity
consulta,
to
creando
be in that
un espacio para
consultation
los
process,
niños
creating a
en
space
la
for
consulta para que las
children
mamás
in the
puedan
consultation process, for
atender
women
en
to
la
be
consulta y dar su
to
consentimiento y recibir la
to
información
provide their
pertinente
consent to
para
receive
darlo.
all the relevant
Entonces,
information to pass it
también
on.
nosotros pusimos
So
que una olla popular en la comunidad para
we
que las
also
mujeres
put a
tampoco
potluck
estén
in the community for
preocupadas de
women
poder
not to be
alimentar a
concerned
su
about
familia
being able to feed their families
durante la consulta, ¿verdad? Entonces,
during the consultation
nosotros ambientamos
process.
todo ese espacio para que se pueda dar esa
And we
participación
created the
plena de las
space to
mujeres.
provide the full
Entonces,
participation
como
of women.
existen ese prejuicio de la sociedad
Since
de
that
que si la
prejudice
mamá
of
no hace
society
eso, entonces
exists,
se
uh,
considera una mala
it's
madre,
considered
¿verdad? Entonces
they're
no
considered a
cumple con
bad
su rol como
mother,
mujer.
so
Entonces,
they don't comply with the
para
rule
que no
as
pase
women.
eso, entonces hay
Therefore,
que
in order for that not to
poner
happen, we need to
digamos, el ambiente para que la mujer pueda
set the
participar
environment
y
for
también
women
darle
to
formación
participate
para
and
poder organizarse. Y
to provide
justamente para que los
information to
proyectos sean
organize.
sostenibles, también vimos que es muy
And
necesario que se trabaje con mujeres indígenas
we
en
believe
temas
it's
de
very
cambio
necessary to
climático
work
y
with
reforestación, porque las
with the
mujeres
First Nations
dentro
and
de su
women from
comunidad
First Nations
son
to work on reforestation because women
las que
and their
principalmente
communities were the
tienen
ones that normally have
dentro de las comunidades sienten
within
más lo
communities
que es el cambio
we
climático y
feel climate
conectan más
change
con lo
a
que
bit
es la
more. We connect
necesidad
more
de
with the
poder
need
seguir transmitiendo la cultura y las
to
carencias de la
continue
comunidad y ser
maintaining
más
or conveying the
sensibles
culture and
y
what the
tienen
community
más
lacks, and that we're
voluntad
a bit
también
more
de
sensitive
hacer,
and we have
pero
more
necesitan un
willingness
fuerte
to do
acompañamiento
things, but we
porque
need
muchísimas
strong
veces todavía les cuesta
accompaniment because many times it's very hard
hacerse
for us
escuchar y hacerse oír,
to
no porque no se le permita, sino porque no sabe la
be
forma de poder
heard.
expresarlo, digamos, de cierta forma y alzar su voz. Somos muy sumisas
We need to
todavía.
raise our voices. We're
Entonces,
still
esa es mi experiencia desde el proyecto
that's my experience from the
Proeza y
project, right?
como mujeres
We're
indígenas
still quite
tenemos
submissive.
poca
And
organización, solamente
that's my
dos.
experience as
Una
women.
es Mujeres
We have
Invisibles del
just
Paraguay y
two
otra es la
organizations. One is
Asociación de
Indigenous
Mujeres
Women from
Indígenas
Paraguay, and the other one is the
Puno-Guaraníaque,
Association of
que yo también soy
Indigenous
miembro
Women, which I'm also a member of.
fundadora
But
de esas
in
organizaciones y
Tepuy, which I'm
incluye
also a
también
member of those
en
organizations.
esa área
And I also preside and lead that area. And we're working much on rescuing the cultures within our communities. And I was listening throughout this entire
I was hearing from you during this report, and there's not many differences from the barriers that we have, especially regarding territory and the economy, finances point of view. Well, what I would add here is that in Paraguay, we've got many illegal marijuana farms. Since indigenous communities, the ones that are ownership have here, are invaded for those illegal crops, and that brings a lot of women issues for indigenous women and their families in general. So yes, that's what I would add.
Es una de las barreras que nosotros
That's one of the
tenemos y que
barriers
también
that we
va
have.
degeneralizando la forma de vida cultural dentro de la comunidad.
So it
Y
has to do with the cultural way of living in the communities. And my apologies, because here I'm also here in Congress, and I've got the head of teaching and indigenous orientation. I just assumed this position. I'm here doing that too, and it's very important. I also take my role as a leader, very important as a head here, so I can fulfill with this because they gave me the. I'm also part of the regional coordinator, regional research coordinator, and they trusted me. And within the 8 departments where we're implementing this project, I'm the only woman that's in this coordination. They're all boys.
Pero justamente a mí me pusieron como juventud y
Department
nosotros
representatives, but I was here as
de
a
los
youth.
8 departamentos. Entonces,
I'm here leading the
agradezco
8
muchísimo a
departments.
la FAO también por haber,
So I'd like to thank
haberme
FAO
invitado
very
y
much
poder también
for
hacer
inviting
escuchar un
me and
poco de cómo estamos nosotros ahora. Y
to
estamos
hear about how we're
luchando,
doing now.
principalmente yo
And
creo que
we're
para que las mujeres se
fighting
puedan
for women
apropiar de los espacios, organizarse,
to
tener
own spaces,
participación,
to
lo que
organize
también
the
es necesario es
participation,
que se financie
and
a las
that's why we need to
organizaciones y
fund
mujeres para que puedan hacer
women's
estas
organizations for us
sensibilizaciones
to
de
raise
violencia,
awareness,
de
right? On
igualdad, de
violence,
equidad,
equality,
de la
equity,
parte cultural. Y justamente las mujeres son
culture,
los que
and
más
women
pensamos también
were the ones
en los
that also
jóvenes y en
think
los niños y se está
more
haciendo
about
muchísimos trabajos con
the
estas
youth,
organizaciones
children,
en
and we're
estos
working
niveles,
with
pero
all
no
these
se abarca
organizations at all
todo
these
y
levels, but
muchísimas veces no
we're
se
not
puede
covering everything.
hacer
So
los proyectos porque no
we can
tenemos
have the
cómo
projects.
ejecutarlos y lo que más falta es el
What we're
recurso.
missing, for the
Muchísimas
most part, we
veces
can't implement some of
digamos,
them
también
because
por la
we're missing in
situación muy
resources, and that's
importante
why
de
we have
las
a critical.
agencias.
I'm sorry,
Sí.
ma'am. Thank you very much. It's very important to what you're proposing, but we need to respect times, okay? So we'll have a question for you later, and you'll be able to explain a bit more, okay? Okay. Okay, thank you very much for everything proposed. I think it's important for us and for everyone that's hearing you. So let's go back and talk with Juana. Juana Ferrer. We have a second question for you, Juana. Based on your experience at Coramuca, how do civil society organizations work along with the state to improve the rural women's life conditions? Thank you.
Okay. Bueno, gracias.
Well, thank you.
Quiero poner así como en primera fila, ¿no?
I want to talk about
Cosas importantes.
the important things, and we've worked jointly. FAO, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry, Women's Ministries, right? Other ministries, and organizations of women farmers and businesses, etc. We've worked on gender policies linked to agriculture. Therefore, we're here as an organization at your willingness to continue building and contributing for that gender policies to be commissioned in a systematic manner in which we can truly reach an actual and real impact to benefit women who work in farms and families, young women, the youth, right? That's key for us. Another very important element that is about what we do and what do we need. We need to strengthen this. It's this partnership with agri institutions, right? Or institutions linked to the agriculture. And we need more planning
importantes, como darle importancia, perdón,
Just
a esos programas,
to
iniciativas
provide importance to the program and initiatives that are already there, right? We're not starting from scratch. We already exist and which we've worked on together with the Ministry of Women and other departments
de manera conjunta ir dando respuesta a la
to
problemática que
jointly provide an answer to the issues which we're still going through, right? The youth, the women farmers, Afro descendants, indigenous, or First Nations. It's very important for that partnership to allow us to put into practice food sovereignty. For example, in Dominican Republic, we have law on safety, food sovereignty, and nutritional sovereignty. And we still need to define a mechanism for this purpose, and not only to define the mechanism for application, because there's a mechanism. These mechanisms have to be worked on together in consultation with the organizations and the farms and the entire national territory. And additionally, we need to work on government institutions and farmers movements, etc., and other allies. We need to work on jointly to have an integral and popular agrarian reform, right? And my apologies, I think someone just mentioned this before. There's no way of advancing in the country's development, the economic development of women linked to agriculture, if we don't have an agricultural reform that is popular and integral. We need to make changes, modifications. In 1997, we were able to have an agrarian reform where women we have access to transfer land in equal conditions than men. But there's another element in that we need to improve, that we need to change.
Es importante
It's
en los
important
territorios también la
in
alianza que
territories to
con los
have a
gobiernos
partnership
locales.
with local governments. And I'm saying this because we, in some provinces and municipalities of our country, we've been able to create partnerships and execute initiatives related with the food systems and other demands and needs. But we need to advance in decision making. For the entire country has to advance in organizing the gender units. 1 minute, Juana. Within local governments to also advance jointly. Care is also very important, right? We've been working on this together in Dominican Republic. There's a process. There is a program, pilot program,
provincias en Santo Domingo para encaminar
in
un
some
programa
provinces in Santo Domingo to have to create a care program. I don't have time to detail this, to give them much detail on that, but that we believe it's very important.
Debemos trabajar conjuntamente.
We should work jointly, we, the government, or within the government organizations of the state, we should advance in other entities that I mentioned, like the Ministry of Women and other programs that exist in our country.
Tiene que haber un reconocimiento
We must
para lograr
also have recognition to achieve the different political, social, household tasks. In order to achieve this, we need to recognize, the state has to recognize, the governments have to recognize the institutions. They need to recognize the important role we play as women in the agri-food systems. But not only that, but in the entire development. Dominican Republic, despite the limitations, women will still contribute with 70% to the development of agriculture. And despite the fact that it's not paid for, not evidenced, but are not acknowledged. But I know that we'll achieve this by looking for a strategy. It's important to continue with this joint work and to prioritize the more vulnerable areas of the country regarding women. So thank you very much. And yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Juana. And it's a pleasure to hear from you about how active women's participation is, real women's participation is in Latin America, right? Let's continue with Gloria Irene Aviles, our lands doctor, right? For us, let's ask her our next question. As a soil doctor in your practice, right, and as a PhD in soils, how can we soil preservation support the resiliency of rural men and women, especially in the face of the effects of climate change? Thank you, ma'am. Okay, thank you, my dear comrade. And as I said in the beginning, this has to do, it's a topic that is important. It seems like you're far away from the microphone, ma'am. Can't hear you that well.
¿No? Ya, si pudiera hablar un
No?
poquito más fuerte,
If you could
entonces.
speak up, if you can, that would help us much. I speak loud. Anyway, if we begin and initiate with the soil preservation practices, we say how this impacts, right? And if we talk about how this impacts, I say everything obeys to training, preparation, and we need to not think that rural zones shouldn't be cared for, right? And that is why some of the criticism made at a government level for it's not just about men and women, it's just men and women that we create this good transformation team. How can we speak about sustainable and agriculture, right? The resilience between men and women is because of the support, that resilience that exists of managing and sustaining that agriculture. It's about that and not leaving normal habitat for cities where there's nothing. So we always manage manageable soil, sustainable soil. We, as a result, that will let us stay in the farm to produce. We produce clean and healthy because everyone's idea is that in order to avoid the continuous destruction of our natural environment and to avoid the negative effects of climate change, we must also talk about the recovery of micro basins, the water basins, and to talk about agroforestry. Those would be the important topics for our field, our farms not to be deteriorated in our country. And I'm speaking from Ecuador. We have had failures because transnational companies have been accountable for sending many products that will deteriorate the quality of our soils. When we empower ancestral practices and we recover them, we say, hello, we exist, we live, and we will not fall into the temptation of pesticides, and we'll say, okay, let's go to the bio inputs that we're obtaining. And that's one of the struggles of women because we've been the ones that have led these processes and we've leveraged very important topics for that recovery of the bio inputs. And we're learning all this for our families and our children, our families to already come with that theory embedded. Here in Ecuador, we don't have women that have land tenure, that own land, right? That's one of the problems. And another problem which has weakened women much is inequality. That's just like my comrades said before, my peers, right? Inequality and the unequal work, unfair work that exists is still quite notorious. It's very hard to obtain spaces within processes for women. The struggle for integrating women into these topics or fields in the large leadership processes emerges with the Secretariat for Women's Secretariat and with the Ministry. Yes, this was developed, but comrades of mine, and I'm not trying to be unfair, but here we give more space, they give more space to urban women than to rural women. And we're still invisible in a quite strong percentage, right? We're still made invisible. We've been working on this process and we've related with soil management, the management of resilience in the face of climate change. And within that work, we do work along with the social organizational topic, right? We are the leaders for large processes, for this process such as cooperativism to be empowered by women and leveraged by women. That's it, my friends, what we've been doing from Ecuador and from all areas. And thank you very much for hearing me. And take me a long time to detail the process, but thank you.
Sobre el trabajo que usted realiza y bueno, seguiremos en contacto.
Thank you very much, Gloria. We're eager to listen to more about the work that you do, and we stay in touch. And thank you so much for your intervention. Shall we go back to Tamisha Lee? And we're going to ask her the following question. From your experience in the network of producing women in Jamaica, the Jamaican Network for Rural Women Producers, what have been the most important accomplishments of women producers in Jamaica since you organize yourselves as such? Thank you very much.
Thank you again for your question. What have been the most significant achievements of Jamaican women producers since we were organized in 1999? Since our formation, Jamaican women producers through the JNRWP have achieved the remarkable milestone that speaks volume about the power of collective action. One of our most significant achievements has been increased visibility and recognition. Our contributions are no longer invisible. They are celebrated. We are actively participating in national agricultural dialogues, holding leadership positions within organizations, and being recognized for our crucial role in food security and rural development. We are not just producers, we are leaders. Another key achievement is enhanced economic empowerment through collective marketing efforts, innovative value-added processing initiatives, and improved market access facilitated by our network. Women producers are experiencing greater financial independence and control over their livelihood. This isn't just about income, it is about dignity, stability, and a direct positive impact on our families and communities. Furthermore, our organization has fostered profound social empowerment. Women have gained confidence, honed new skills, and developed a stronger sense of agency. We are challenging traditional gender roles, taking on leadership within our communities, and fiercely advocating for our rights. The solidarity and mutual support nurtured through our network have been instrumental in building this collective strength and driving meaningful, lasting change. Finally, a truly tangible demonstration of our power, our seat on the board of the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, the extension arm of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining. This directly resulted from our organized efforts, proving the undeniable impact of collective advocacy in influencing policy and securing vital resources. Just recently, this advocacy led to the allocation of 5,000 baby chicks and feed for 100 of our members, a concrete example of how organization translates into direct positive impact on livelihood. The journey of our rural women producers underscores a fundamental universal truth. Organization is not just beneficial, it is absolutely essential for our empowerment, our economic advancement, and our rightful recognition as indispensable players in the agri-food system. Our achievements serve as an inspiring example for women producers across Latin America and the Caribbean, and indeed for women striving for progress globally. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Over back to you.
Muchas gracias, Tamisha. Muchas gracias por traernos las voces de las
Thank
mujeres
you so much,
caribeñas.
Tamisha. Thank you for bringing the voices of Caribbean women to this event. It is so important as well, the work that you have been doing. Through you, we would like to acknowledge it. So thank you for your intervention. So we continue with Tania Vera from the Regional Indigenous Coordinator from Paraguay. And we would like to ask you, Tania, from your experience with the community and the regional coordinator, how can we progress and what will be key to progress towards the full exercise of women's rights, or indigenous women, sorry. We listen to you, Tania.
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 Parece que Tania ha tenido alguna
It seems
dificultad.
Tania has had some issues regarding her connection, and so we wait for her. If we hear back from her, we'll give the floor to her to answer the question. So we have some questions from the public. I was sent my questions over my phone. I'm sorry, my phone was frozen. Tania, are you there? I'm so sorry, what happened? This all froze off. I had to log back in. We had a question for you. We wanted to know, from your vision, how can we progress towards the full exercise of the rights of indigenous women?
Bueno, disculpen.
Well, I am so sorry.
Tuve un problema de conectividad.
I had a
Pero
problem
ya
with my
estoy.
connection, but I'm already back online.
Nosotros acá en Paraguay tenemos
We here in Paraguay,
muchas normativas
we have a
excelentes,
lot of
pero que no se
excellent
aplican.
standards,
Y
but
dentro
that
de
do not
esas
apply.
normativas tenemos el Plan
And
Nacional
within these
del Buen
standards, we
Vivir,
have the National
que
Plan
fue
of the Good Living,
realizado por
which
nosotros,
was done
y
by
ahí
us,
contempla cómo se tiene que
and
trabajar
then it contemplates
con
how
las
we need to
mujeres
work
indígenas y juventudes
on
también.
the indigenous women and the youth
Y
as well.
nosotros lo que necesitaríamos
So
es
what we would need is
justamente que ese plan se
precisely
implemente
that this
para
plan
que
should be
podamos tener también
implemented
una
so
participación
we can have
plena
a
en
full
todos los ámbitos, no solo
participation
en la parte
in
rural
every scope, not only the rural aspect
participación política
and
social,
participation
sino que
of the
también
social policies,
en,
but also
en el pro de lo que es equidad y la igualdad de la
for
inclusión de las mujeres indígenas
equality and the inclusion
dentro
of
del sistema
indigenous women
nacional mismo
within
para
the
poder nosotros
national
tener una
system
voz
so we can
propia.
have our own
Aparte
voices.
normativa, yo diría
So
que
the
ya
standard,
tenemos
I would say,
bastante. Lo que
we
hace
need
falta es
we have a
realmente que
lot.
nosotros
What we need to do
tengamos una
is
mesa técnica
we
con
need to have a
instituciones
technical
públicas
table
para
with
poder
public
implementar
institutions
ese
so
plan.
we can
¿Y cómo
implement
podríamos
this
lograr
plan.
eso si nuestras
And how
bases
can
y
we achieve
organizaciones
these if our bases
de
and the
mujeres son
organizations of
fuertes?
women
Y
are
eso es lo que
strong?
actualmente
And
estamos
this is
tratando
what
de
we are
instalar,
currently
una
trying to
organización
install in the
fuerte
organization.
y que las
And we
comunidades
want to get a
indígenas
strong organization. So
tengan
the
esa
indigenous
formación y
communities
conocimiento
will
para
have this
poder
organization
utilizar esas
and training
normativas y
so
ese
they can
plan
use these
que se
standards.
hizo
And this
con mucho
plan
sacrificio y con
that
mucha
was done
consulta para
with a
que
lot of
se logre
sacrifice
la
and a lot of
implementación
questions
de
so we
ese
can
plan.
achieve the
Porque
implementation of
ahí
this
está
plan.
ya todo nuestro
So
sentir de
there,
cómo
all
nosotros
of our
queremos
feeling is
que
there. How do we
dentro de
want
las comunidades
that
indígenas se
within the
realicen
indigenous community, how do we want
los
to
trabajos de todos los
do
ámbitos,
the works
ya
of
sea
every
educación, salud
scope,
y la parte
be that
cultural y
education, health, and the
agricultural
cultural
también
part, and the
dentro
agricultural part
del
as
desarrollo
well
comunitario está
within the
todo ahí.
community
Entonces,
development. All of that is
nada más
there.
recalcar lo que ya he dicho en mi intervención
So
anterior.
this is the
Pensé que
previous
tenía ese
intervention.
momento nomás,
I thought I had
pero
this moment,
prácticamente ya dije todo
but
lo que
practically
era
I said
esa parte
everything
también.
that related to
Entonces,
this
dar
part. Thank
énfasis
you
en
so much.
eso, que
So I would like to
necesitamos
stress
más
that
apoyo en lo que
we
es
need
la
more support
formación
in terms of the
y
training,
la parte organizacional. Y
the
de verdad,
organizational
muchísimas
part.
gracias por la
And thank you
oportunidad,
so much for
por el
the
espacio y
opportunity,
por
for
escucharles
the space,
también.
and also
Ahuye, que
for
gracias en
listening to
guaraní.
them as well. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Tania.
Thank you very much, Tanya, for sharing with us a little bit as well. So we have a question that is coming from the chat. So I would like to ask this to Claudia. So this question says, to make a change in the upcoming years that will allow to close these gaps of inequality suffered by rural women, what should we do? So what should change in a clearer way or more evident way? This question is done by Maricel Piñedos. So thank you, Maricel, for your question. And we said some things in the presentation, but it seems that the question wants that we address in detail certain aspects. I believe that here the women present have given us some clarity that there's some challenge in the implementation of the public policies. So we have public policies in our country. So Latin America is one of the regions that have the most public policies in the world of the agro and the agro-food systems as everything, good laws for food and nutritional security. Many of them have an intervention with gender that's very clear. Also, some policies for gender for the agro-food system. Many countries in that framework regarding legislation as well. Good quality legislation in some countries regarding land ownership. So what are we lacking? Now we are missing a number of things. First, at the implementation of the policy, there are many times our sector policies that need to be addressed among themselves and among ministries, and they're responsible for their implementation. But apart from these, we need to bring to the discussion the Ministry of Social Development, so the social protection policies that will allow to get this structural basis of these structural gender gaps with the programs of social protection that come to people in their communities. And also in the cities, they should come together with the programs that the institutions develop. So here we need to make an articulation that goes from the level of national social protection all the way to an inclusive drop to the programs that are necessarily within the ministries. So we have some challenges that have to do with articulation in the sector plans, and that I believe that in the processes for implementation, they need to contain these levels of articulation. So especially in the case of women, because we have maybe 50, 60 years. Let's think of Beijing, without speaking of the regional conference of women that already is 40 years old in Latin America. So our conference. So we need to think that the gaps are still there and they're installed, so that there are progress. Without a doubt, there are some, but these are evident. So the gaps in many cases continue being there, and poverty, this hard poverty that affects the rural world, we need to move it, and we need to have actions that will allow us to mobilize the different sectors and innovate in the policy. Public policy by itself in FAO, we always say that just FAO or FAO alone can't address all the problems of the agri-food system. Governments alone can't address them. The organizations are, every time we ever more so need to join efforts around national and state policy so the different sectors can get involved. One of the things that I spoke about and that are innovation that can be done are the alliances with the private sector, but key strategic alliances to improve things as employment, the access of women to technology in work, the access of women to employment, technified employment, for instance, and mechanized employment. There's a number of opportunities that are there. But also, and this is key, the public investment for the promotion and the acceleration of the empowering of producing women that in a region are fundamental, especially in family agriculture and also the countryside agriculture. So we can eat healthy foods in our region. So we can make the cost of the food, healthy food baskets cheaper, because our region is the most expensive one. For that, we need ever more so that women are also in the productive systems, because we have this awareness that has been clear here in this event of the care of soil that women have, of their impact in the lives and the families, and also in the communities for women regarding the transformative capacities they have for leadership in communities such as the indigenous communities, Afro communities, and the potential of young women in the waste world. We need to promote this, and we need to promote that, and that means to implement policies and call allies that with whom we traditionally do not work with. And there I would like to highlight a topic that Juana was telling us about, which is the work with the municipalities and the district agencies, and we call these the public sector of a second level. Why? Because the actions that municipalities carry out and the mayor offices do, they are directly in the territories. If I need to serve a situation of violence, let's say, and I have an area in the municipality that works on the topic of violence, this service goes faster to women in the countryside without having to move to the city to do that. So we need work at that level too. We know, for instance, that we have many municipalities that are making important investments in specific programs for women, and also that the laws of the municipalities and the mayor programs in our region include many times a budget of labels to work with women. So, and then we have opportunities for investments that we need to make the most of. So in FAO, we have great examples of good practices in some countries with this work. So this is, we have issues that, of course, the main thing is, as always from FAO, we say that there should be a political willingness. If there's a political willingness of the highest possible level in a country, from there we start getting changes. And from there, we're working at FAO promoting that political willingness is stronger in the region. So our ministers, our presidents, so they can know the situation of women and they intervene in consequence. So that is one of our roles from the UN as an agency of the system and our mandate. So count on us for these spaces of decision making and changes and transformation in the implementation of public policies. Thank you so much for the question, Maricel. Thank you, Claudia, as well for answering. For time reasons now, not because this is not interesting, we're going to begin our closing, and I start by thanking our panel members. I would like to express our gratitude to each one of them for their valuable contributions and their valuable perspectives. In the same way, I would like to give a pass to close here. So, and also Nidia Pesantes, representative of the UN Women Office in Bolivia, and leader of the Regional Hub of Gender, Environment, and Climate Justice. Thank you very much, Nidia.
Hey, thank you very much to FAO. Thank you very much to our comrades and peers from the family agriculture and farming organizations. For me, it's an honor to accompany you and to contribute to our closure, which is really to mention again what was clearly mentioned by everyone else before me, both in the technical part of the FAO and in the experience and the knowledge for transformation that is in our peers from the different rural organizations of Latin America and the Caribbean. Misha set the framework, the context, when she said that Beijing and Beijing plus 20, right? And the reference framework that we've got, and that framework of 1995 really clarified an element which I believe can be critical for this conversation, which is that women are the most stable component that exists in the rural environment, right? That's what the sphere proposes regarding environment, and it proposes it with much clarity. What does it mean for women to be the human component that's more stable in ruralities, that they have time to be there, but it's time that's overburdened, right? They know the land, the soil. That's why they're land doctors, because they know the environmental regulators that many times the science doesn't know, right?
and it applies directly all the different inventions, which are wonderful, and sometimes they've got a secondary consequence, right, or an effect. We really live with the earth, we live from earth, and we work earth. We're rural women, the ones that feed the world. Nevertheless, they're not in employment. And as FAO said, 71% of women who are in rural areas who work creating food or are not part of the agri-food systems that employ labor. Women, we are the ones that are connected with the environment and life, and women, nevertheless, in the rural field are not being recognized, not only because of space from peers, but also in urban space, right? And as Tanya mentioned, women have been stigmatized this year, right? When women start doing more things in production and don't respond to care the same way, that's where we're poorly mentioned as bad mothers, right? And they need to work just to be good mothers, because good maternity is also provided for with the capacity of survival and livelihood. Because in Latin America, almost 30% of households are being headed, that they're head by women, they're being sustained by the work of women. There's a true lack of valuation of what's known as female work. And as our colleague from FAO said, the work for caring, it's a work that's not acknowledged, not recognized, and there's a true valuation in the rural side, right? And Gloria's spoke with much clarity, because the relationship between rural, which is less valued, and they feed urban, and urban, the urbanity extracts food, water, and all the possibilities of life of what's rural, and they give back pollution to rurality due to the lack of waste management systems. So there's an extraction towards what's urban, and from rural there's contamination towards from urban there's contamination towards rural again. This has to match to sustain agri-food systems. If not, we're contributing an imbalance that needs to recognize that, yes, rurality, despite the fact that cities grow, or just because they grow, we will impact quite negatively, right? And that will put at stake the existence of human beings, right? And why do we have this imbalance? Why do we have this lack of valuation? Is this economy of care, or the work for care, why is it not visible? Because our current system, our current development model values what's urban on top of what's rural. Why? Because productive is on top of the care of life, right? And caring for life. Because financial systems are on top of the strengthening, that they exceed the regulation, the protection of environmental regulators. This way of life, for example, when we talk about the care for environment and caring for women, it makes it more important, really, than when we talk about the production of hydrocarbons or production of at a large scale, right? In an intensive manner. It's what women do that Tanya mentioned, Gloria mentioned, Amisha, Juana, everything they mentioned makes, and it forces us, the UN, to put something different at the core, to change the centrality, the care of life, to focus the network, put at the center the care of life, the network of life, for our decisions to be related with its growth, and that production and generation of income and growth are under that network of life. And just then will we be able to reach balance, because women are there at the core and caring for life. So thank you very much for everyone for sustaining us and keeping us alive. Thank you very much, Nidia. And yes, we want to better care for our network of life. And okay, let's go to Constanza for our final closure. Thank you very much, Katarina, and thank you to all of our excellent panel members that we had today, our speakers, and hopefully dialogue, data, and recommendation provided by this regional report are the foundations to close gaps, to prioritize interventions with a greater impact, and even more for these findings to translate into concrete actions that transform the lives of rural women and thus guarantee a better life for everyone. Thank you very much.